12 years in the black, and you stop counting the days. You count contracts. You count fuel reserves. You count the number of times the hull integrity alarm trips before you bother getting out of the pilot seat to check it. 47. That's where I was the night everything changed. 47 false alarms in 6 months, and every single time I dragged myself down the corridor with a wrench in one hand and a coffee bulb in the other, and every single time, it was nothing. Thermal expansion, micro debris, the ship settling into its own bones like an old woman lowering herself into a chair. So when the cargo hold scanner lit up with a non-human biosign at 0300, I almost didn't go. I want you to sit with that for a second. I almost didn't go. The corridor was dark. It was always dark on the Kestrel. I kept the overheads at 15% to save power, and the walls were that military surplus grey that swallowed what little light there was. My boots stuck to the grated floor. Engine grease on everything. The smell of recycled air, that flat metallic taste that never goes away no matter how many times you swap the filters. I had the wrench. I didn't bring a weapon. 12 years hauling decommissioned military tech through dead space, and I'd never once needed a weapon inside my own ship. The cargo hold was the coldest part of the Kestrel. I felt it in my knuckles first, then my jaw. The overhead was out, had been out for weeks, one more thing I hadn't fixed. So the only light came from the status LEDs on the crate locks, little dots of amber and green floating in the black like eyes. I swept my hand lamp across the stacks. Crates of salvaged comm arrays, crates of hull plating, crates of things I hadn't bothered inventorying because the buyer wouldn't care. And between 2 crates in the back corner, curled on the bare deck, something that was not cargo. My lamp found his feet first, bare, long, too many joints in the toes. Then the legs, drawn up tight to the chest, then the torso, and that's when my hand stopped moving. His skin was deep obsidian with an oil-slick iridescence that shifted through indigo and violet as my light crossed it, like watching fuel on water, but alive, responsive, rippling with color that had no business being that beautiful on something bleeding out on my floor. His eyes were open, captured nebulae with pale swirling cores that brightened when my light hit them. And I mean brightened, like something behind the irises flared when it registered me. Geometric silver scarification traced across his throat and collarbones, precise as circuitry. And the lines pulsed with his heartbeat, dimming and brightening, dimming and brightening, each pulse weaker than the last. When he breathed, the pressure in the hold changed. I felt it in my inner ear, a subsonic weight, like standing too close to an engine that's cycling down. He was bleeding something that glowed, pale silver pooling beneath him, seeping between the deck grates. It lit the underside of his jaw. It lit the edges of the crates. It made the whole corner look like a dying star had crawled into my ship to collapse in private. My wrench was up. I don't remember raising it. My arm just did what 12 years of solo flight had trained it to do. Threat, weapon, swing. Simple math. But my arm stopped, mid-swing. My elbow locked and my fingers went loose, and the wrench hung there in my grip like it had forgotten what it was for. He looked at me. Those nebula eyes. The pale cores swirled once, slow, and I felt the pressure shift in my inner ear again. A deep hum I couldn't hear so much as feel settling into the bones of my skull. He didn't speak. He didn't flinch. He just looked at me the way you look at the last warm thing you'll ever see. I lowered the wrench. He'd crawled in during the salvage dock at Barron Station. I figured that out later. The cargo hatch had been open for 6 hours while I loaded. He must have slipped between the crates in the dark, curled himself into the smallest space he could find, and waited to die somewhere that wasn't cold. I set the lamp on a crate. got down on my knees in the engine grease and his dissolving light. His silver blood was warm. I could feel it through my flight suit at the knees, a heat that didn't belong to any fluid I'd ever encountered. Up close, the geometric scarification on his throat was intricate beyond anything a human hand could produce. Silver lines branching and reconnecting in patterns that shifted as I watched, like a circuit rewriting itself. There was something in his hand, clenched tight against his chest. A scrap of metal. No, a piece of hull plating from my own ship, torn from somewhere I hadn't noticed. He'd etched something into it with light. A glyph I couldn't read. The lines still smoldered faintly, silver on gray. I reached for the wound on his side. I don't know why. I'm not a medic. I had a first aid kit rated for human biology and a wrench, but my hands moved anyway, pressing against the place where the silver light bled fastest. And the moment my skin touched his, something happened that I will spend the rest of my life trying to describe. The pressure in my inner ear became a sound. Not a sound I heard. A sound I was. A low, vast, resonant tone that started in my palms and traveled up my arms and settled behind my sternum like a second heartbeat. His scarification flared. Every silver line across his throat and collarbones lit up at once, and I felt the light move through my hands, up my wrists, into my veins. Warm, alive, threading through me like mercury finding its path through broken glass. My vision went white at the edges. My chronic shoulder pain, 12 years of hauling crates in low gravity, vanished. The permanent headache I'd had since the radiation exposure at Callus Point went silent for the first time in 8 months. I felt my cells respond to something they recognized, even though I'd never felt it before, like a key turning in a lock I didn't know I carried. Then he collapsed. The light died. His eyes closed, and the only illumination in the cargo hold was the faint silver glow crawling through the veins of my forearms. I didn't sleep. I dragged a thermal blanket from the emergency kit and wrapped him in it and sat on the deck with my back against a crate, watching his chest rise and fall in a rhythm that didn't match any breathing pattern I knew. 3 breaths. Pause. 1 long breath. Pause. 3 breaths. His scarification dimmed to almost nothing. His skin lost its iridescent sheen and went flat, dull, like obsidian with the light turned off. Something in my chest pulled toward him. A directional tug, subtle as a magnetic field, and when I leaned back against the crate and away from him, the tug strengthened. When I leaned forward, closer, it eased, like something in my body had been calibrated to a distance it wanted to maintain. I stayed close. I told myself it was practical. He was an unknown biosign on my ship. I needed to watch him. But my hands weren't shaking from vigilance. They were shaking from something else entirely. He woke on the second day. I'd moved him to the bunk alcove off the main corridor, the only space on the Kestrel with a heating vent that actually worked. The overhead there was at 15% like everywhere else, a dim amber wash that caught the edge of his iridescence when he moved. Deep obsidian shifting through indigo and violet. Nebula eyes with pale, swirling cores that found me immediately, as if he'd known exactly where I was before he opened them. Geometric silver scarification across his throat and collarbones pulsing with his heartbeat. Stronger now, but still wrong, still faltering on every 4th pulse. He sat up slowly. The pressure changed in my inner ear. He looked at the thermal blanket, at the water bulb I'd left within reach. At me. He said one word. I didn't understand it, but I felt it. A vibration in the air between us, a resonance that made the silver in my veins hum in response. I held up the water bulb. He took it with both hands. His fingers were long, precise, And when they touched the plastic, I saw him feel the texture, turning the bulb slowly, studying it, not drinking, understanding, learning the thing before using it. I pointed to myself. Kira. He watched my mouth form the syllables. Then he touched his own chest. The sound he made wasn't a word in any language I'd ever heard. It was a chord. 2 tones, simultaneous, harmonizing with each other and with the hum that had settled permanently behind my sternum. I couldn't reproduce it. I tried. He watched me try, and something in his expression shifted. Not quite a smile, not quite anything I had a human name for. But the pale cores of his eyes brightened. I called him Vel. He let me. I woke on the 5th morning to find my water recycler optimized. Every filter cleaned, every junction sealed. Routing paths redesigned in a pattern that wasted nothing. I stood in the engine bay staring at work that would have taken me 3 days, done in silence while I slept. He was in the corridor behind me. I felt him before I turned. The pull in my chest shifted as he moved, a compass needle swinging to true north. He couldn't stop himself. I learned that maintaining things that sheltered him was as involuntary as breathing. If I left a tool out, he organized it. If a panel flickered, he fixed it. Not because I asked, because something in his biology demanded that the space around him function, that the things keeping him alive be kept alive in return. The Kestrel started running better than it had in 6 years. On the 8th day, I ran a manifest scan on my cargo. Routine. The scanner read my cellular signature as part of the identification protocol. Standard security, every hauler does it. But the results came back wrong. My signature was laced with something non-human. Threaded through at the cellular level, integrated into my DNA in ways the scanner couldn't separate from my own biology. I stood in the cargo hold with the tablet in my hands, and I understood, in a rush that turned my stomach and lit up my spine simultaneously, why I hadn't been sick in 3 months, why my shoulder didn't hurt, why the radiation damage that should have been eating my bones was simply gone. He had healed me, reflexively, the way you'd pull your hand from a flame. And the cost. I didn't learn the cost until later. Each healing burned years off him. Veleth biology fed on proximity to their collective song, a resonant frequency generated by their people gathered together. And he had been silent for 3 years. Alone. Cut off. Every cell in his body slowly winding down like a clock with no one to wind it. And he had spent some of what remained on a stranger because she was broken and he was in her ship and he couldn't help it. I sat on the floor of the cargo hold and pressed my palms against the deck and felt the silver in my veins pulse with something that had no name. The contracts kept coming. I had to dock. And docking meant the quarterly injections, radiation resistance treatments that every deep space hauler took, standard as fuel and twice as expensive. I'd been taking them for 9 years. Little amber vials administered at licensed med stations. I never asked what was in them. Nobody did. I asked now. The medical database on the Kestrel was outdated by 6 years, but it was enough. Veleth bone marrow. Processed, refined, rendered down to a compound that mimicked radiation resistance in human cells. The quarterly injections I'd been taking for 9 years contained the remains of his people. I pulled up the supply chain data. Harvesting facilities, processing centers, yield reports measured in kilograms per unit. The language was clean. Professional. Logistics. The word Veleth didn't appear anywhere in the official documentation. They were listed as source material class V biological. I made it to the head before I threw up. Barely. 70% of the horror was this. I carried their dead inside me. 9 years of injections. Thousands of Veleth reduced to amber vials that I'd watched a medtech push into my arm without a single question. The compound had rebuilt my cells, repaired my radiation damage, extended my operational lifespan by decades. My body was a monument to their slaughter, and I hadn't known, and not knowing didn't make it less true. Then, the other 30%. I ran a compatibility scan, my cellular signature against his, and the results told me something that dropped the temperature of my blood by 10 degrees. My immune system was learning his light, not fighting it, learning it. The 9 years of Veleth-derived treatments had primed my cells to recognize and consume Veleth biological material. My body didn't reject the silver threads in my veins because it recognized them as food. The bond between us was teaching my cells a new hunger. Given enough time, my immune system would attack his light. Not because I was incompatible with him, because I'd been engineered, injection by injection, to harvest him from the inside. If you're still listening to this, if this story has its hooks in you, the way his light had its hooks in me, then stay. Tell the channel you stayed. Subscribe if you haven't, because what I'm about to tell you is the part that changed the shape of my life. I didn't tell him what I'd found, not because I was protecting him, because I couldn't make the words form. My throat closed around them every time I tried. I'd open my mouth and feel the silver hum behind my sternum and see those nebula eyes with their pale, swirling cores brighten when they looked at me, and the words would die. The signal came on day 14. Acquisition Specialist Harlan. He broadcast on an open channel with the casual authority of a man who has never once questioned whether he has the right. His voice was smooth, modulated, the voice of someone who'd been trained to sound reasonable while discussing inventory. Kira Vance, I'm seeing an anomalous biosign on your vessel. Unregistered Class VI biological. I'm authorized to offer full medical rehabilitation. The real thing, not the quarterly patches. Plus coordinates to 3 other live specimens you could deliver at your convenience. That's 4 pickups at standard finder's rates. You could retire. Specimens, pickups, finder's rates. He talked about Vel, the way I talked about salvaged comm arrays. Think about the math, Vance. 1 unit for a lifetime of stability. That's clean logistics. I cut the channel. My hand was shaking so hard I missed the switch twice. We ran. I knew the dead space corridors better than any syndicate tracker. 12 years of hauling through routes that didn't exist on official charts. I killed the transponder. Ran dark. The Kestrel was old, but she was quiet when she needed to be, and I pushed her through asteroid shadow where the mineral density scrambled scanners. On the 3rd day of running, we found them. A convoy, 6 ships, Veleth refugees moving through the dark in formation, running the same routes I ran, but for different reasons. Their hulls were battered. Their engines sang, literally sang. A harmonic frequency I could feel through the Kestrel's bulkheads. And when Vel heard it, the scarification across his throat and collarbones flared brighter than I'd ever seen. Deep obsidian, shifting through indigo and violet. Eyes like captured nebulae, flooding with light. The silver lines on his skin grew new branches as I watched, extending toward his heart, and I understood that his body was recording this the way mine recorded sunlight, feeding on it, rebuilding. They let us dock. They let me board. And then they saw my cellular signature on their scanner, and everything stopped. Veleth hands pulled him toward their ship. Human hands, my own hands, reached for him, but other hands held me back. A Veleth woman who stood nearly 7 feet tall pressed her palm to my sternum and pushed, and the resonance that traveled through her arm into my chest told me everything her face didn't. You are what we run from. Your cells carry our dead. You broadcast to every syndicate scanner within range. Staying near you means leading hunters to us. They voted. Vel argued. I heard his voice. That chord, those harmonics, rising in a cadence that sounded like begging, stripped of everything soft. But the vote held, and they separated us. I stood in my airlock and watched their ships pull away. The tug in my chest pulled taut like a wire being drawn through my ribs. I could feel the bearing of his ship changing course. I pressed my hand to the hull plating, and the metal was warm where I touched it and cold everywhere else. The etched glyph, the scrap of hull plating he'd held in his hand the first night. He'd pressed it into my palm as they pulled him away, both his hands around my one. Those nebula eyes so bright, they lit the corridor between us. Another Veleth refugee had gone absolutely still when she saw it. Silent. The kind of silence that means something sacred just happened in a profane place. I didn't know what the glyph meant then. I learned later. Lineage responsibility. A declaration etched in his own light into a piece of my ship that I was his and he was mine, and the universe could choke on its objections. I wore it against the hollow of my throat. Harlan survived. Of course he did. Men like Harlan always survive because they're never close enough to the blast to feel it. He'd gotten tissue samples from the convoy's trail, enough to synthesize tracking compounds. He broadcast my biometrics to every bounty network in the sector. And then he followed the light, moving through my bloodstream toward its source, because the bond between us was a signal, and my body was the antenna. I drifted through asteroid shadow, alone again. The kestrel humming around me, running better than she had any right to, thanks to hands that weren't here anymore. The foreign pulse behind my sternum strengthened when I turned the ship toward him, weakened when I turned away. The silver etchings beneath my skin. I could see them now, faint lines tracing my forearms like rivers on a map drawn in mercury. Burned when his ship moved farther and cooled when the distance closed. I shut down the navigation computer. I didn't need it. My body already knew the bearing. I flew by the warmth in my bones. I found them in the ruins. A Veleth settlement on a moon with no official designation, half destroyed, the structures grown rather than built. Walls of dark, crystalline material that hummed when you touched them. Archways that resonated at frequencies that made your chest ache. Bioluminescent growth along the floors, pale blue and silver, painting everything in light that seemed to breathe. The darkness between structures was absolute. The kind of dark that has weight. The kind you walk through like water. They'd gathered here, 30, maybe 40 Veleth, the last of something. Survivors. Their ships nested in the ruins like birds returning to a bombed cathedral. And Vel was among them. And when I walked through the outer archway, the pull in my chest went slack for the first time in 11 days, and I could breathe again. He was standing in what might have been a courtyard. Deep obsidian skin, shifting through indigo and violet in the bioluminescent light. Eyes like captured nebulae with pale swirling cores that found me across 30 meters of alien ruin, as if I were the only source of heat in the universe. Geometric silver scarification across his throat and collarbones pulsing steady and strong, and the new branches, the ones that mapped every moment I'd spoken to him or touched his arm or fallen asleep in the same room, had reached his heart. I could see them through his skin. A silver constellation centered on his chest, and every point of light was a memory of me. The Veleth watched me, hostile, afraid. The tall woman from the convoy stood between us with her hand raised, but Vel walked past her, walked to me, and pressed his forehead against mine. Silver threads unspooled from his temples. I felt them enter my bloodstream through the skin of my forehead, warm and deliberate, threading through my veins like living mercury. Not asking permission, not waiting for consent. His biology reaching for mine, with the inevitability of water finding its level. The resonance between us became a frequency I could hear now, a tone, a chord, a song that was ours alone. I felt it rewrite something in the architecture of my cells, not consuming, not the hunger the treatments had built into me. Something else, something that was teaching my immune system to sing instead of eat. His hands were on my face, mine were on his chest, over the constellation of silver light, and I could feel each point pulse beneath my palms, like a second heartbeat made of everything we'd been to each other in 14 days. The Veleth woman lowered her hand. Around us, in the bioluminescent dark of their shattered home, the Veleth began to hum. Low, subsonic. A sound I felt in my teeth and my sternum and the silver threads now woven permanently through my bloodstream. The ruins resonated. The crystalline walls caught the frequency and amplified it, and for the first time in 3 years, Vel was not silent. His scarification blazed. His skin rippled with indigo and violet so vivid it cast shadows. And the sound that came from his throat was not one voice. It was the chord I'd heard on the first day, but completed now, harmonizing with 30 other voices and with the frequency living in my blood. I held the etched glyph against my throat and felt it vibrate. The lineage mark, the declaration. A scrap of my own ship carrying his light, pressed to the place where my pulse was visible. They let me stay. Not all of them agreed. Some watched me with the flat wariness of people who have been hunted by things that look like me. But Vel argued, and the mark argued, and the silver light threaded through my veins argued in a language older than words. Harlan was still out there. I knew it the way you know weather is coming, a pressure change, a shift in the quality of the silence. He had my biometrics. He had tracking compounds synthesized from Veleth tissue. He was following the signal my body broadcast every second of every day. The bond between us converted to data on his screen, love reduced to coordinates. But I had something he didn't. I had a ship that knew dead space. I had 12 years of roots that existed in no database, and I had a bearing that no instrument could jam, because it lived in my blood and pointed toward the only thing I'd found in 12 years of flying that was worth stopping for. I stood at the edge of the ruined settlement and looked out at the black, the bioluminescence at my back, the dark ahead. Somewhere in that dark, a man with a supply chain manager's voice was converting living beings into logistics problems, and he was coming for the light inside me because to him it was inventory with a margin. Vel's hand found mine. Long fingers, precise. The geometric scarification on his wrist pulsed against my skin, and where his silver met the silver already in my veins. The light brightened. We stood there in the threshold between the ruin and the void, and I felt the foreign pulse behind my sternum match his heartbeat for the first time. Not pulling, not tugging, just beating. Together. Two rhythms finding the same frequency. My body had been built on their bones. 9 years of injections. Thousands dead, so I could haul cargo through irradiated corridors without my cells collapsing. I couldn't undo that. I carried it the way old buildings carry the scars of earthquakes. Structurally, permanently, in the architecture of what I was. But the bond was rewriting the blueprint. Cell by cell. Thread by thread. Teaching my body a different relationship with his light. Not consumption. Resonance. I pressed the etched glyph against my throat and felt the hum of the ruins and the hum of his blood and the hum of whatever I was becoming. Not fully human anymore. Not Veleth. Something in between that neither species had a name for. Something new. Something that existed because a dying exile crawled into a cargo hold to find warmth, and a woman with a wrench didn't swing. The war is coming. I know that. Harlan is a symptom, not a disease. The syndicate that processes Veleth for human longevity is an industry, not a man. And industries don't stop because one hauler defected. The bounty networks have my face. The tracking compounds have my scent. And the signal living in my bloodstream leads directly to every Veleth survivor gathered in these ruins. But I have dead space roots and a ship that runs quiet. I have a bond that lets me feel the bearing of the people I need to protect. I have hands that learn to fix things from someone who couldn't stop maintaining the things that shelter him. And I have his light inside me. Silver threads through my veins that glow faintly in the dark. And when I close my eyes, I can feel 30 Veleth heartbeats harmonizing with mine in a frequency that means home. The dark is ahead. It's always been ahead. But for the first time in 12 years, I'm not flying through it alone. And for the first time in 12 years, I have something worth flying toward. If this story landed somewhere in your chest, if you felt the pull the way Kira did, then let me know. Hit like, subscribe if you want to hear what happens when Harlan finds the signal. And to the channel members and super thanks supporters who make it possible for stories like this to exist in the dark. You are the resonance. You are the reason the song keeps going. She turns the ship toward the black. The glyph hums against her throat. And somewhere ahead, in the space between stars, the light answers.